You're listening to the Feel Good Astrology podcast with Louisatannermunson. To request your personal reading, go to feelgoodastrology.com.
Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Louisa Tanner-Munson from Feel Good Astrology, and I'm here to just share with you some of my thoughts about this next new moon, which is starting on the 17th of July, 50 minutes before the North Node changes signs, and also that within 8 days, we've then got the effect of Pluto squaring the nodes. So I just want to give you my thoughts about this, because in many ways this fits into the North Node conversations. You'll see I've got part 1, 2 and 3 about the North Node in Aries from different perspectives, and I think this is also a very important part of it, this first week of the North Node changing signs. So as you can imagine, this is a really huge, really big new moon, and it's a great opportunity for you. So let's have a look at it and have a think around where it might fall in your chart, and also what you might want to do with it. How might you want to use that energy? So let's add that in. Let's make it even bigger. There we go. So the first thing that I really notice about this new moon, and this is the obvious one that, you know, everyone I think is going to pick up on, is the fact that the new moon, so the sun and the moon in the sign of Cancer are in opposition to Pluto at 29 degrees in the sign of Capricorn. Like the sun and the moon, they could represent like mum and dad. I always think of the sun and moon and Saturn in terms of triastral astrology or transactional analysis. You know, the sun represents our personality, our adult ego, the moon represents our inner child, and Saturn represents our inner parent. But here we've got effectively our ego and our psyche, or our adult self and our childlike self. And then we've got an outside force, an outside enemy that we're pitting ourselves against. Pluto shows trauma and darkness and the idea of transcendence. So, you know, often the things that happen with Pluto are they kind of destroy us. It brings us to our knees so that we can lighten, that we can yield, that we can actually find freedom. But it usually does it through themes of taking you over completely. Literally, I guess if we look at this as a big yin yang sign, you know, in the dark side, we have a little spot of light, and in the light side, we also have a little spot of darkness. So wherever we are, there is no such thing as a complete darkness or a complete lightness. And I really think that this new moon in the sign of Cancer, which I would say would represent a deeply intuitive, feminine light, a warmth. Obviously, you know, the moon doesn't equate to warmth when you look at the temperatures of a full moon or a new moon. But there is a lightness that, you know, it's illuminating our path through the shadows, you know, at nighttime. Obviously, at the time of the new moon, there's no light at all. So you know, there is something instinctive about the moon. It helps us find our way. It's our instincts, our psyche, our emotions, our intuition. It's all there, and it's there to guide us through the darkness. And Pluto really shows us what we're facing. And it's almost like the things that go boo in the night, you know, the things that are creeping around that we're not quite aware of, but we get that sense of a shiver up our backs. So this is a very important new moon. I would say whatever challenges are coming up for you right now represent one of your biggest fears. So if something is coming up and you're feeling quite triggered, I would absolutely recognize, you're a hero because you've realized at some sense what your biggest fears are and what you're most afraid of. It also represents the collective archetype of fears as well. So you might also, during this highly sensitive time, be picking up on some of the big collective fears right now. I mean, if you think of Pluto, you might think of plutonium, you might think of nuclear disasters. If you think about what's happened in this last month, there's been the idea of the Titanic wreck that imploded. or the Titan that imploded in the middle of nowhere, in the dark. The idea of death and destruction, the idea of World War III, is it going to happen or not? Is it already happening? All sorts of ideas to do with death and dying and destruction. And Pluto often shows us what's hidden. And it's snuck back into the sign of Capricorn. It could be all these hidden clauses, these hidden agreements that governments are trying to put through, that banks and insurance companies, that medical institutions are all trying to pass under a cover of darkness. And it's that sense that something is going on behind the scenes. And this is showing us we're aware of it. We sense it. We might be afraid of it. And of course, it's very difficult to know what you're up against when Pluto is going retrograde and is showing up in the absolute position of darkness. But we are very, very sensitive here. Now, there's some other things are quite important to this new moon. I love this yumminess here, this trine to Neptune. Now, this is emphasizing our intuition and our psychic receptivity. And it's in the sign of Pisces, which is very much about the oceans and the depths, and how there are no boundaries to what we're feeling right now. And so we really could tune in to things that we've never noticed before. If you think of Pluto and Neptune as well, they are both known about what is underneath. So Neptune is about the oceans, what lies beneath the oceans. And Pluto is the god of mines and the god of the earth, the god of everything that exists in the earth, the precious metals, any mines, tunnels, anything, secret worlds, even secret portals, all sorts of things. So both of these two, at the moment of the new moon, it's kind of interesting. It's almost saying be afraid of what's not quite revealed, but also there's a mixed treasure for us to discover, and we're sensing it, whether it's out there for us to see it consciously or not. We are aware of it, really truly aware of it. And then we've got this lovely semi-sextile to Venus, reminding us that we are of love, and that we can connect into love, and that in fact we need to remind ourselves of how connected we are. That's very beneficial. There's also this sextile to Uranus, which is reminding us that change can happen just like that, that change can be very instant, and it's a bit of a karmic change. So yeah, there's quite a few big things going on, some big shifts, and I would say these are the main ones. Now here's a big thing. So the sun and the moon are already in a square to the north node and the south node at the time of this new moon, and then over the next following short while, 8 days in fact, until we get Pluto in an exact square to the north and south node. This is only intensifying, with the position of the sun. The sun is moving closer and closer and closer into a square. So I think this new moon on the 17th and the north node changing signs represents a absolutely potent day for changes and seeding change. It is like you are going through, when you think of the squares of the moon and the sun and the nodes, and then also the square to Pluto as well, it's almost as if humanity's understanding of the world it lives in is shifting significantly, and humanity's understanding of the waters that we swim in and those things that might not be so obvious that are coming up against us. And also, I should say, anything we see outside of ourselves is also part of our projection. It's also within ourselves. So any perceived evil that exists on this planet is something that is showing up at this time. So this is a huge new moon to explore, really big. Okay, so we were looking at the new moon, and so I said, 8 days later we've got this exact square between Pluto and the nodes, both all at 2903 of fixed signs. No, not fixed signs, sorry, cardinal signs. So we've got Pluto at 2903 in the sign of Capricorn. We've got the North Node in the sign of Aries, which is a cardinal sign at 2903. And we've got the South Node at 2903 of Libra. Now, interestingly, I said that the Sun was moving from the position of 24, 25 degrees at the time of the new moon and moving into a square and then just moving just the other side of it. So we had this square coming into play over this first week of the new moon and also the North Node in the sign of Aries. So that would have been absolutely bringing out the personal feelings of people, really bringing out the idea of what is my mission, what is my destiny, where am I in terms of the past and the future. And I was reminded of it a little bit today, that, you know, we have these perceptual positions, the past, the now, and the future. And the news, and also, you know, like my broadcasts and most people's broadcasts about different things, it's always reminding you of a different time. So, for instance, I'm looking back in at charts, reminding you of times of the past and saying, look at the patterns. Then I'm looking into the future. But when we're in the past, it's like we're perceiving things, and it's our ego that's perceiving what's happened in the past and what we make of it, and what that means to us in the now. When we're looking into the future, it's also our ego looking into the future and thinking, what is it that's going on? And so this now point, I really think that from this new moon, right the way and through until just past this Pluto square, we are almost in this week of stasis, you know, where we're thinking, okay, we're kind of in the now right now. I don't even know what I think about the past anymore. My mind's almost been blown apart in recent years as to what works, what doesn't work. We've been told one thing, we've experienced another. There's been all sorts of censorship, all sorts of illness, all sorts of health ideas, all sorts of ideas on community banking, blah, blah, blah. It's been so much. It's almost like there is this collective moment of, is it despair, or is it like we are coming into this moment of not being able to hold any more ideas in our head, and we have to just say, enough, enough. And we are just in our bodies. Yeah. And so I see this week as being a week whereby, if we're wise, we will just stay in the now. And to do that, I absolutely recommend that we check out our senses. Now, this is what I really like about the sun being in the sign of Leo at this time, because the sun is in its own sign. And the sign of Leo, if you think that Leo is the fifth, traditionally the fifth sign, it represents fifth house things. The fifth house things are things we're birthing, things we're experiencing through our cosmic womb, our actual womb, our sense of procreation. So it can be sensuality, it can be the delight of being creative with music, with art, with however we want to be creative. But we're in our senses. You know, the fifth house I really think of as being a very present and physical sign. And so I really think that one of the things we can do if we're feeling this head kind of explosion kind of thing, this feeling of how much more can I take, is I would rephrase that question into, and this is a sort of access consciousness question, which I've heard said many times before, but how much better can this get? So, you know, like turn around the feeling of, oh my goodness, this is more than I can quite cope with, but think, okay, how can this get any better? How can it get any better than this? You know, just to look for the positive and also engage in our senses. Like if you are feeling overloaded, take in a deep breath, think, what can I taste? What can I smell? What can I hear? What am I feeling on my skin right now? What am I feeling with my feet flat on the floor? Go somewhere, take your shoes off, ground. Notice what you can see, what kind of light you can see, and just draw in with all of your senses, a really sort of sensational, kind of creational place to be in. And I think that will really help us. If anything, it's almost like we're going back to times of no thinking, you know, where we're just like, okay, I give up. I cannot control what's going on. I cannot seek or hope to control, because there is something much bigger than I can conceive of. And it's time now to just recognize I'm a spiritual being in a quite confusing world. And that is also okay. It's almost like a defeat, but also not a defeat. It's a submission. It's a yielding that, you know, we're spiritual beings, but we're all spiritually co-creating together at the same time. And for us to have our will done, we have to expect other people would want their will done. And, you know, truthfully, we've all got different set points and different things that interest us. And so the collective collaboration is sometimes out of sorts, and it really seems like it is at this time. But the great thing is people are getting conscious that something is coming. There is some change. There is this sense of a doingness. And I say the doing very purposefully because we've got the North Node and South Node in cardinal signs, which are doing signs. And also we've got this last bit of Pluto in a doing sign in Capricorn. So isn't it interesting when Pluto is exactly square the nodes, the sun is in opposition, you know, reinforcing that feeling around the time of the new moon. So I really see it as a portal of beingness from the new moon until this time, because what we are being is emerging, is changing, is evolving. Whew. And as this comes into its exact moment, look where the moon is. You know, the moon is just a few degrees away from coming into the perfection as well. So, yeah, a huge time. So if you remember at the time of the new moon, you know, the moon has moved all the way around to here by the time it's in a square to Pluto, and the sun has moved into the exact square and away from it. And so I see this as being a pause and a rewriting. And during that time too, Venus has also decided to go retrograde. So this is a huge week. So there you go. That's some thoughts on it. I hope it's been useful. What I would absolutely say is if you are born with planets or angles at the end of the cardinal signs and the beginning of the fixed signs, this is most likely going to affect you more than everyone else. So for instance, if you've got something at like 1 or 2 degrees in the fixed, or 27, 28, 29 in the cardinals, what's going on right now is going to be aspecting your birth planets and angles. And it's going to feel like life is changing in very, very real times. You know, this grand square, which is what is emerging between the sun and the moon, the nodes and Pluto, is huge. And it's very much about the integration of who you are, and also the integration of everything that you can't quite perceive, everything that might be perceived as evil and outside of yourself and controlling and manipulating. I mean, this could be an opportunity for us to realize where our darkness is. Like, not many people like to admit that we have darkness. You know, we all, you know, when we look at terrible things happen, we often disassociate ourselves with it and say, oh no, I'm a good person, I do this, that and the other, I'm really good. But actually, no matter how good we are, we often do have these like random thoughts, and it is like there is something inside of us, you know, like we have this devil on one shoulder and a God on the other, and we're continuously playing. And so I see this kind of stasis week, this 8-day period of time, as being an opportunity for us to integrate the dark and the light and actually love the darkness. You might find that as you love what you cannot see and love what you fear and love what you can't articulate, couldn't that be a great time of integration where you truly love every part of yourself, including those parts of yourself that you feel deep shame and guilt and regret, embarrassment and anger over? Could you imagine if you could integrate the darkness into the light of that? Wow, this is a massive week, or 8 days. And like I said, this is also right at the start of the North Node change into Aries. And I think that really sets the scene for it. If anything, you know, look at this 18-month journey with the North Node in Aries, look at it as, you integrating the dark and the light, because trust me, if we can all integrate what we perceive as darkness outside of ourselves into the lightness of being that we know ourselves to truly be. I mean, we're all innocent. Everyone is a being of light. Even though my dog's getting a bit of a telling off in the back garden. That sounds a bit serious. But anyway, we are all beings. We all are created out of innocence, I think. We are all of this love energy, and this is a time of deep, deep integration and a massive challenge to do it. Are you up to it? It's a huge thing. Let me know in the comments below how that feels and what you think might be coming up for you. Anyway, lots and lots of love. Enjoy the new moon and that really interesting week ahead. Bye for now.
You've been listening to the Feel Good Astrology podcast with Louisa Munson. To request your personal reading, go to feelgoodastrology.com. You've been listening to the Feel Good Astrology podcast with Louisa Munson. To request your personal reading, go to feelgoodastrology.com.